now I think that AI is going to force a lot of staid, tired, conservative professionals in this business to be more creative. Because when their clients can come to them with some, hey, I made this image, I want to do this, you have to acknowledge that. You can't just say, oh, but I just would prefer to stamp some 6-inch downlights on this drawing because I know that my fee is conservative and a good, blah, blah, blah. Because I saw the wildly innovative, unconstrained side of it. That's what drove me into that business. And that's what AI and things like Midjourney will force the lighting community to do, right? And that's played out, and that's only going to get worse with AI. If that's your view of lighting design, you're a goner because you've been replaced by software.
Brad, how are you?
Good morning. I'm good, Martin. Nice to talk with you again.
Yeah, it's been a while. I wanted to ask right off the bat something that I saw in social media 1 or 2 days ago. Somebody posted something about immersive environments on the post, and your good friend and mine also, Roger van der Heijden, replied, "Oh, talk to Brad Koerner. He's the guru." What would he mean with saying Brad Koerner is the guru when it talks about immersive environments?
I have had about 30 years to think about this, so I've been a bit ahead of the curve on this. Just so everybody might know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a Walt Disney Imagineer. So that was back in the 80s. So I really got into it. I learned what show control systems were and taking cinema and theater design into the real world as a very young kid. So that led me to study architecture at the University of Virginia. Next door to the School of Architecture was the drama department. So I took all the theatrical technical courses, lighting and stage set design. So in one side of my life, I'm learning Le Corbusian, modernism and Mies van der Rohe and morphosis and all that. And on the other side, I'm learning narrative and the element of time and storytelling and all the technologies behind that. So then when I went to a master's in architecture up at Harvard, I kept exploring that. And what happened was LEDs came out around that time, blue LEDs specifically. So you had some of the first uses of big LED screens. You had the NASDAQ screen in Times Square, and you had U2 going on tour with their Pop Mart tour. So it very quickly became apparent that like LEDs were going to become an architectural material, and that video and digital content could just simply become an architectural material that surrounds us. So, this was an era of, Sony Trinitron monitors that weighed 70 pounds on your desk. And that was not sort of obvious for a lot of people at the time. But when you looked at it, you realized architecture is just going to become this portal to a virtual world. And the internet was taking off, but it was very clunky back then. There was not good interfaces. You had your keyboard, you had your mouse, you had your 14-inch screen in front of you. And I started to say, well, you combine all of these things. You combine what the best of Imagineering or theatrical immersive theme design, and you combine all the technologies of show control and the internet. I said, the physical places will be the best interface to the internet and to the digital world, because it gives you so many more methods to engage your body as a spatial controller. And it gives you so many ways to layer information, and it gives you so much more in terms of all of the architectural terms like threshold and progression and, placemaking is so much richer when you combine the physical and the digitals to create the interface. Now, what happened is I had perfectly bad timing. I finished my thesis and published it in February of 2001. And in March of 2001, the NASDAQ crashed, and nobody wanted to hear some kid running around saying they're going to put internet into physical retail stores.
Right.
And then I wound up being a lighting designer in Boston for 4 years, doing a whole bunch of projects until joining Color Kinetics and product management and getting to experience the whole kind of vanguard of the LED lighting revolution. But I've never stopped thinking about this. And as the technologies have sort of come true to my prophecies, it's not surprising to me, right? So a lot of the ideas that I theorized in 1999 and 2000 have indeed come true. So I think that's what Rohir was giving me some credit for.
You have published a lot about immersive environments, digital walls, and all the things that you can do with it, whether it's in retail and in other environments. It's quite impressive. I walked through your website last few days. There's a lot to digest there, and a lot also is about exactly also this what you're just describing. So I find it really engaging, and somehow you've always seen like at the edge, at the forefront of technological developments. Also through your journey, you and I both are from the Philips School. Somehow, we spend time there and evolved from there. You towards color kinetics, and later I think you did a lot of other things. Maybe you can describe for those who don't know you that well how your journey has been to what today I believe it's a freelancing consultancy that you do from Amsterdam with Koerner Design and Lucent.
Yeah, well, as I said, for some reason as a child, I developed a fascination with light, and it goes all the way back, I think, to watching the Main Street Electrical Parade at Disney, and then my dad did some landscape lighting around the house and simple things. I've often tried to figure out how does a kid become fascinated with light, but I did, and I went up to Boston to start my master's, and I got an internship with Rittman Lighting Consultants. So it was Chris Rittman and Adam Kibbe who were wonderful to me and taught me all of the old school lighting technologies because that was, 98 still, pre-LED revolution. And then I worked with Dinah Yorkis, who was a Fisher Morant Stone, an associate, and moved up to Boston and created her own firm. I worked with her for 4 years. We won the ILD Award of Merit for montage and did some great projects. Now, as I said, then I moved into the manufacturing side of the business where I joined Color Kinetics because they needed that sort of design market expertise because they were brilliant in terms of the technology, but they really didn't have the application side of it. I went back to Lamb Partners for a couple of years to do lighting design, joined Micron when they started an LED division. Then I wound up here in Amsterdam 14 years ago at Philips, where Rohir Vanderheide, the chief design officer of Philips Lighting, recruited me to do a special projects team. So I did things like the Rijksmuseum here in Amsterdam and led a corporate venture and was in the 3D printing venture for a while. And since then, I've been doing a variety of startups. So I did a DC Power startup. I was in a retail media network startup. I helped a retail branding and signage company develop lighting and redo their marketing. And most recently, I was 2 years at a company called Megapixel in Los Angeles, which does incredibly high-end LED displays and processing systems for film and broadcast. So to me, the progression has been perfectly logical. To a lot of people look at me, my career outside that have very siloed impressions of what lighting is or what AV is or what sustainability is. They kind of wonder, why am I all over the place?
You're not really, because there's still sort of a central drive about innovation, about how we can push the envelope from lighting design, and intelligence. And that brings me to one of your revisits of your early thesis. When I walked to your website, I saw that you looked at your thesis and your thoughts about that in 1999, and you decided to revisit that with the AI tools that you have today with you. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So I have been incredibly frustrated across my entire career and in education, frankly, at the confusion between tools and results. So in my world view, there's skills, which is
Mhm.
I know how to design a great building. I know what it should look like. I know how to do the zoning. I know how to make it look pretty. I know how to structure it versus the tools, which is I could take a stick and draw in mud, or I could put pencil on paper, or I could use CAD, or I could use Revit. And then there's the results, which is actually delivering a great building that your client is paying you for. And I've seen all of these revolutions. I'm just old enough that I started at Rittman Lighting using ammonia driven blueprint machine, and fax machines and currying paper packages around the city and all that garbage. And at school I had these professors that were like fetishizing these ancient crafts of hand drafting and modeling, and they were unable and unwilling to accept new technologies because frankly it was a threat to their ego. So what I did in 99 and 2000 to visualize my thesis was I had to use very clunky early 3D
Mm.
modeling software that took forever to get a single image. I had to use an early version of Photoshop that did not even have multiple undos yet. You can try imagine using Photoshop where every time you click
Mm.
anything, that's
Yeah,
your undo.
yeah,
And by the way, saving would take you about a couple minutes because the files were so big and slow on the old computers. So I literally was taking 35 millimeter slide photography of quarter-inch models that I had projected another slide through to get these effects of showing these sort of digital curtains and digital screens and all this crazy stuff, and scanning it on a slide scanner and all this stuff. And it just struck me that as I'm trying to visualize this future of a spatially driven interactive portal to the digital world, I get these Harvard professors eulogizing the craft of ink on mylar and pencil on vellum, like somehow that craft is like what makes architecture architecture.
yeah,
And it's in hindsight, it should be obvious to anybody that they're full of it. That's not true at all. A great architect could draw, like I said, a stick in the mud and make a great building.
mm,
So I don't have a lot of patience for all these people that bemoan the next generation of technologies. You remember when Photoshop came out? Remember there was literally people saying photography will be ruined forever. We'll never trust photos again. Photographers won't be needed, right? There was people when CAD came out, they were bemoaning, oh, now we're just going to get rid of architects because we're going to automate the process of architecture with like AutoCAD, version 3 or whatever.
yeah,
Um, so what I did is I took those key images that took me a year to make in my thesis, and I just dumped them into Midjourney with a few keys, made a bunch of great visualizations, and pulled 5-second videos from it. And this all took me about, I don't know, less than 2 hours. I
yeah.
threw it into DaVinci and I edited it into a short little 30-second video clip. And my point of that is that was what was always in my imagination.
Mm.
I just never plug a jack into my brain and extract that and
Yeah,
share it. Like
yeah,
I have always had a rich imagination as a creative designer, and my limits have always been my hands and methods and tools.
yeah,
And what gets me about AI, we're going to have this discussion, I'm sure, but like
yeah,
I
yeah.
I was a lot of lighting designers will know exactly what I'm talking about. When you've had to be in a room with an architect who desperately needs to be the most creative person in that room, that they have their big creative egos and they need to be perceived of as the genius with all the ideas, right?
Yeah,
Okay, well, no, I don't buy that. I've been in so many projects across product and construction that I know that innovation is a systematic process. I can out create and out innovate anybody because I know the process, right? So I don't really suffer these fools who have created these sort of artistic monopolies because they know some narrow craft, right? They figured out how to use Photoshop, so they think they're like artistic geniuses, and that or now you have AI experts and they think they're the gurus on AI. Well, they'll be superseded eventually too.
yeah, yeah, for
uh,
sure.
and it's like when the tide goes out, you see who's naked in the water, right? There's a lot of these creative professionals that really don't have very good imaginations.
No,
They
they
banked
talk,
on
they
that
talk
sort of
about, but
technical
yeah, yeah,
monopoly. Yeah, they
yeah, yeah,
banked on like their reputation and the technical monopolies to hide the fact that they're really not that creative. And
yeah.
now AI is allowing anybody with an imagination to get that out there and share that and visualize that. So I don't fear AI at all. I love it. It's great. It's
Well,
only allowing my creativity to shine even more.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, we'll get to that. I wanted to touch upon some of the other things that you said in the past, because you also mentioned a lot of disruptive trends that you saw coming a couple of years ago. You even spoke to about that on our VLDC platform. A great talk, by the way. And now AI, I can see that you have been busy with AI for a few years already, but really for the world as we know it today, it's literally something that has exploded over the last 12 to 18 months, if we can say it that way. Now, if you look back at what you are saying about the disruptive trends, how much AI, how much is AI sort of disrupting that again?
it's disrupting everything because there was like a lot of concepts about how things could potentially work,
Mm,
but the tech wasn't really there. It was
mm,
kind of hopes and dreams. And there's like, for example, I spoke years ago about DC power systems in
mm,
buildings as a fundamental infrastructure way to allow a lot more other innovations to happen in digital displays and sustainable
mm,
lighting systems and embedded lighting in ceilings and walls and stuff like that. And as part of that, when you think about the infrastructure going all digital, right? You could imagine, say, the power structure in a building is fundamentally digital. So the electrons are all flowing through digital. So the system then can monitor where all the power is flowing. Okay. And I said in a presentation, I think 4 or 5 many years ago, I forget how long ago, and I said, so there's obviously going to be like machine learning and AI optimizations of how power is flowing and used in these buildings, because you don't have this wall between the DC monitoring and the old AC infrastructure. Okay, that's really easy for me to say that 5 years ago, that of course there'll be this future where you have AI monitoring all this stuff. But now that's like very true and very real, right? And when I say, like, for example, in a retail display, you'll have kind of a dual world of generative media and traditional canned media,
mm,
right?
mm,
And this is something that I was thinking 25 years ago, is that there will be these systems where like it just generates content. Uh, who knows how back then, but now it's very easy. Now you have many ways to generate content. You could do it algorithmically, you could do it using Unreal Engine or live rendering, you could do AI systems. You have all this ways of doing generative visuals and media, and then you can, instantly layer on top canned media. So for example, you could have some perfume display or whatever, make it up. You could have the perfume content as some precisely beautiful rendered thing, and the logo is precisely rendered and all that. But the context, the background behind it is constantly generative. And every single time you go in that store over the course of a year, it's going to be different, and it will
yeah.
never look the same. And the design challenge there is that you're creating the guardrails for how you want the space to look, and you're letting the AI go crazy and evolve that automatically over time. And
Mm,
those are those are all these concepts that were available in science fiction and all that for years and years and years, and finally they're just available, eh, so radically easy to use and for such low cost that, like, you've instantly wiped out the content problem on a lot of these digital
mm,
experiences and architecture. If you could even get the person to put the money in for the hardware, good luck getting them to put the money in to actually put content on that hardware. Well, the content costs have plummeted now, and the whole process has plummeted. So creating mood boards, creating samples of what it looks like, programming it has, you know, 10x or 100x factor less than what you would have been even just 2 to 3 years ago.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's to me is the big thing over the last 12, 18 months is the speed in which AI has developed and increased and multiplied. You say it, Gary, 10x, 100x. It's where is it going to stop? It's going so fast that we are we have you mentioned about the photography thing that we basically have had Kodak moments in the past, but I think we are at another Kodak moment right now where if you don't jump into this AI world, you'll be left behind because people adapting quite quickly. Now, the older generation like me might have a bit more struggles in getting into it because, first of all, I'm semi-retired. Do I really need to? But I find it so exciting that I want to. And as you know, I've been busy working with my co-founder Sahil, doing a fundamentals course for AI for lighting designers because I think it's something you will need to master somehow. You will need to understand what AI can do because if you don't, it will master you probably in many ways. So the speed of change and the speed of implementation, I think, is mind-boggling.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
the accelerating rate of innovation. And
yes,
that's a concept that humans don't deal with very well, is that it's not a linear flat thing. It's an accelerating rate of innovation.
mm, mm,
And that's happening across many industries. And that's sort of, people just don't get that concept.
no. But I just want to go back on your disruptive trends. Would you rewrite that now that with the knowledge of how AI is already infiltrated in our daily lives and how we do things?
No. So, for example, like for the IESNA, uh, they asked me to write a future prediction back
Mhm.
in 2019 for the next
Mm.
decade, and it was delayed a bit by COVID, but it came out in 2020.
Yeah,
And I had listed 6 disruptive trends, is what you're referring to. I think one was like embedded lighting, one was every light a pixel, data-driven lighting, and then on the other side of it was uh, sustainable lighting,
circular
virtual
economy
twin,
and
and
yeah.
DC power. And if you look in there, I didn't call it AI necessarily, but I called it machine learning, which is what it was back then. The
Yes,
simpler
yeah,
flavors of that,
yeah,
and all of those concepts that I had were foundational. Like the explosion of AI just makes a lot of that easier and
yeah.
faster. But you could see that that was going to happen in the future, right? So when I said every architectural wall will become a digital display of some sort and it's data driven, how do you generate the content? Well, you could have done it back in 1999 using processing as a language and program something. You could have done it using Adobe After Effects. You could have done it using VJ software for live stuff, but it was just hard, technical. The hardware side of it was expensive. It
Mhm.
wasn't ready. Now it's like a teenager could go and do it in about an hour, right? Using these AI tools. So I think the thing here that a lot of people don't embrace or can't embrace professionally is that in the old days, the technology was the limiting factor, right? Not your imagination. You could imagine stuff and the technology was expensive and slow and all that. Well, now
Mm.
the technology is not really a limiting factor anymore. Practically speaking, the amount of processing power you have, I mean, you can get a Raspberry Pi that has more processing power than a computer from
Mm.
just 5 years ago for like $30, right?
Yep.
So there's no excuse on the technology. You're only limited by your imaginations. And maybe a more harsh reality is that you're only limited by your project coordination
Mm.
costs and the messy realities of doing something in the real world on a real construction project.
Yeah. Yeah, and mastering your tools at the same time because maybe we can get into that now a little bit. You have mentioned that you at least in your brief to me, you told me that you're using Midjourney, you're using Runway 11 Labs and ChatGPT, all the language models, I would assume. Tell me a little bit how you use that in your daily life as a consultant.
So Midjourney is really the key tool because I'm doing a lot of sort of innovation projects, and at the front end of any good innovation project, you want to like stock the funnel with a lot of ideas. And I find that ideas really need to be visualized, even if they're abstract. You need to put some sort of visuals on that,
Mm.
because us humans are tangible critters. You need to see it, hold it, feel it, an idea, right? You can't just talk and put words abstractly in a PowerPoint. You need to visualize it somehow. So this is the architecture training in me, where, what do young architects, what are they taught? You take cardboard, you start ripping it up, you glue it together, you take tracing paper, you sketch crudely. I mean, you get the ideas out there as fast as you can, and then that helps build common understanding for everybody. So Midjourney is just my way of, like I said, extracting all the crazy ideas out of my mind and getting them out there, both for me to look, for me to curate and evaluate them, and then to share, right? So for example, I'm working with Sean Darris of Lightly again out of Philadelphia for a new round of fixture development. And the first thing that I did with him is I made a deck of tons and tons of ideas for sustainable luminaires, right?
Right.
And in more time than I ever could imagine, I put together a collection of ideas to show like a bunch of ideas, and then I curate that into themes. So there's a clear theme, and then, hey, look at all these great options, right? And it's almost overwhelming to a lot of people because they don't know the process of innovation. So you can drown people now in ideas, and where the challenge becomes is, do you have that sort of product manager mindset where you
Yes.
can curate the ideas? You can
Mm.
create the game board, you can create the qualifications, you can de-risk those ideas down to the best ideas. And that's what AI will not help you with. Oh, sort of. All of this is helped by AI. So let's say you need to do market research, ChatGPT is great for that. You need to do blah blah blah. There's tons of ways that this all helps. But AI is not going to tell you which is the best product for your company to launch
Mm.
as daring new innovation thing that you want to put in the market, right? You still need to figure that out as a human being using a variety of tools. And that might be a cocktail napkin sketch, right?
Yeah.
It might be a crude cardboard model. I mean, I have a 3D printer sitting right behind my shoulder here. I mean, I can rip off 3D models that I will design, no AI, just I'll design it and I'll 3D print it and I'll have it in hand in an hour.
Mm.
So whatever tool you need to get the ideas across that you can share them with your colleagues or with your clients, that's amazing, because that's going to help drive better innovation in the long run.
Mm. Yeah, so like you said, you're the project manager, but also the quality controller. And the big thing, what I feel is that, and that's also how we set up this lighting design course, is that there still needs to be the human input. The AI is good in coming up with tons of solutions and proposals and recommendations, but in the end, you also have your creative intuition. And the longer you have been in the business, like you and I have been doing this for years and years. And when we come to a site or we see something, we know intuitively whether something is correct or not, or whether something will work or not. And I think that experience and intuition and innovation spirit is something that you accrued over the years by doing the projects, and that's where I feel we still have this role of mastering this tool, quality controlling it, making sure that whatever is coming out of there is actually doable, feasible, realistic, and I feel there's still a big role for a lighting designer, regardless of the AI tools that you use, whether it's product design or actual lighting design in itself, to be involved and really curate that to a level where you can, well, I would nearly say reach new levels, purely by adding the human experience to it, which for now, let's say, the AI tools don't really have. But I have no doubt that over time, with machine learning and all that, they may also be able to build in some sort of intuition, emotion, and experience. What do you
You
think?
know, I know exactly what you're talking about here, and what I'm thinking about is there's a couple things. So first off, there's those old farts in the business get too conservative and too blasé, and they just keep doing the same tricks because they don't want to actually innovate and they don't want to actually take any risks as you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
older. And that's why you need the next generation to come in and wash away the dead wood and come up with fresh ideas. But what
Mm,
I hope is that a lot of these AI technologies will reinvigorate innovation in architectural lighting and placemaking because the LED revolution. I was just listening to an old podcast that I talked to the Get a Grip guys about what happened, like where are we in such a bad place when it comes to innovation in architectural lighting? And I said, well, China came in and basically dumped cheap product and everybody did a race to the bottom on cost, and there's been very little innovation. And where I thought the market would go towards sustainability, it just went to cheap junk,
mhm.
right? So now I think that AI is going to force a lot of staid, tired, conservative professionals in this business to be more creative, because when their clients can come to them with some, hey, I made this image, I really like it, I want to do this, you have to acknowledge that. You can't just say, oh, but I just would prefer to stamp some 6-inch downlights on this drawing because I know that my fee is conservative and a good, blah, blah, blah. So let me tell you another story. So back when I was at University of Virginia, I took an architectural lighting design course in the School of Architecture. Okay. And it was an old guy who wore a suit, if you can believe this, and was in a classroom that had like the lighting lab with some old ancient
Mhm.
troffers and junk like that. And, his view of lighting was zonal lumen calcs and codes and recommended practices. And it's like lighting design by spreadsheet. Okay. You want to use AI to optimize that side of the business, go right ahead. It's just plug your Excel spreadsheet into a machine learning thing. And yes, it gets a little bit faster. And sure, there's going to be a lot of people doing that. Like the boring side of lighting design. Okay, great. Make it disappear. Good luck.
Mm,
You won't get those billable hours anymore anyway. But on the other side, I went to the theater department. I took the theatrical lighting design course. The very first day, the first course, Lee Kennedy was the professor, marched us into a black box theater, turned all the lights off, made us sit there in total darkness for a couple minutes until our eyes adjusted, and had a single Edison bulb on like a 5-minute fade up. And he asked us to describe what we saw. And on and on. And he was connecting the internet to high-end systems, cyber lights, and Roscoe Horizon controllers back in 1995 and 1996. And it was just a wildly innovative, creative view of lighting. And thank
mm.
God I saw that, because if I had only seen the Mr. Zonal Lumen Calc and recommended practice guys lighting, I never would have done another lighting course in my life. I never would have thought about it again. But because I
Mm.
saw the wildly innovative, unconstrained side of it, that's what drove me into that business. And that's what AI and things like Midjourney will force the lighting community to do, right? I I've been vocally never a fan of the certified lighting design program for this very reason. And I said, even years ago, I was looking back at an old blog post. I said, if you can deduce the art of lighting design into a book that can be studied and tested in a multiple choice question, then a computer and a piece of software can do it. So why do you need the artists anymore?
Mhm.
Right? And that's played out, and that's only going to get worse with AI. If that's your view of lighting design, you're a goner because you've been replaced by software. And
Mm.
frankly, you could have been replaced by old, so you don't need AI. You could automate most of that if you really wanted to, pre AI.
Yeah, it
And
looks like it.
it kind of struck me when I was now getting more and more into the LED display world, and I've spent more of my time at like the Integrated Systems Europe show in Barcelona rather than Light and Building or Light Fair. And you see the state of the art of those technologies. And those are, by the way, all light sources. You can, and then I go back to like lighting designers I know in the States and I say, hey, You want me to stop by and show you this really amazing, like, micro LED display tiled system thing in this whole world of, no, we're really not interested in that. That's the AV budget. We don't deal with that. And
Mm.
that kind of breaks my heart when you see lighting designers. So it's like dismissing that whole world, like, oh, that's AV. That's not our specification
Mm.
section.
Mm.
And if you take that attitude with AI, you're dead, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You're
I
not
agree.
needed anymore. You
But
know,
you bring up a point. I interviewed in one of my last interviews Daniel and Phil Hammond from the BHA school, and we talked about AI and education. And basically, there's two sides of it. There's the cheating part and the learning part, if I may be crude, right? Because on one way, you can use, they noticed this because over the years, they had built a good understanding about how students do their submissions. And then suddenly, somewhere late last year, or maybe more than a year ago, suddenly the submissions started to change and they were sort of puzzled, but then realized it was AI that was making its entry into how they submitted their work. But then people were not really declaring the use of AI in learning and pretending that the submissions were their own creations. And I think that brings up a point in general in AI. How do we? AI is good for learning, right? For sure. But how do we use AI in a way that is in integrity and is not cheating? Because you just talked about billable
okay,
hours.
wait a second. I take a totally different view on what you're describing there.
All right.
Those
Okay.
students are not cheating. It's the professors don't have their act together and are not on top of the technologies. And
No,
I
no,
went
but that's
through
what
this
they
at
realized. No,
Harvard.
no. So that's exactly what they realized, that they needed to get a handle on AI. But I'm just saying it a bit crudely about cheating and
I know, I
learning.
know, I know. But wait. I want to talk about this for a second because you could say, was I cheating when I was using 3D modeling in MicroStation back in the day? Was I cheating using Photoshop? Was I cheating? Well, to these professors who sat there and just wanted to teach like hand drafting,
Yeah.
oh, this is not architecture, blah blah blah. This is a technology thing. This shouldn't even be. I had professors saying I shouldn't even count it as my thesis because it's technology and it wasn't a pretty drawings of a building. And I'm like, you can see in hindsight that that's garbage. And you know
Mm,
what? What's blown my mind is that coming out of like especially University of Virginia, very good
mm.
design program, but they were very reticent about technology and they just worshipped the old hand stuff. Now
Yeah.
that can be
Yeah.
great. Handcraft, beautiful handcrafted concept models can have a
Mm,
quality that you can't get any other way, but you don't do that and stick your head in the sand and say, no, we don't want it. You can't use CAD because we want to see your hand drafting. Right.
mm,
And what I think is going to happen here is that, okay, what, if you looked at what kids in architecture school could produce as their final stuff in the late 90s around the millennium, and then 10 years later, I went back to Harvard and I looked at the graduation program where all these kids are using Creative Suite, all these kids are using photorealistic modeling, all these kids are using 3D on everything. And they're producing work that would have made the best professional architecture firms blush 10 years earlier.
mm,
Right. And these are kids in school producing posters, unbelievable quality that you could not even have conceived of using the best
mm.
unlimited budgets and all that just 10 years earlier from those professionals. So are those kids cheating?
Now, I think cheating, the word cheating is a bit provocative in a way.
Yeah, but
And
it's provocative in the wrong way. That's not what they're doing. The kids have evolved faster than the teachers, and the teachers just don't like it because it bruises their ego.
maybe, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, we used to Google up things, and now it's just not Google; it's AI. To me, it's an understandable evolution of how we progress, and what you're saying is totally correct. But the discussion comes up even in describing. I know several professional practices that declare their use of AI nowadays in the designs that they do. They even refer to, okay, we used
That's
Nano
I
Banana,
don't agree with
whatever.
that. That's dumb. That's like in the 90s saying, "We declare we've used Photoshop."
Yeah. No, but we are in this time where we are just in this transition stage where AI is something new. Some people feel cheated in a way because, oh, you used AI and I didn't, and like you say, they haven't made the transition yet, but they feel like maybe left out or it's not fair. Well, get on with it because AI is here to use, right? So I'm just bringing
Yeah.
it up as what I come across in the various practices that I see, and I've seen people declare even the tools that they're using to produce their work.
Again, I think that all of those hesitancies to adopting new technologies are about personal, creative, and professional egos and not about any sort of ethics or morality or context. I just went through a situation with a marketing professional. I won't describe any more than that. That was like
Mm,
railing on LinkedIn about how, in the early days, oh, AI is inauthentic. And meanwhile, I'm feeding a sales team books filled with AI so that they can give lookbook concepts and get great ideas to their customers on how to use these new technologies. And
yeah.
it's ridiculous to think that way. That's not it's not a moral thing about the tech. That's not inauthentic. That's not cheating. That's just, get on with it, be faster. Yeah. The skills you invested, all of your precious university time and like, hand drafting or CAD and whatever. Yeah, they're not needed anymore.
Yeah.
The tools you learn to use are not needed anymore. I really hope the skills you got out of that are useful, right?
Mm,
This would be like a machinist who refuses to embrace CNC machines.
mm,
Could you imagine that? I'm sure that there's some old codger machinists that know how to do everything by hand on a lathe and a Bridgeport and all that. And they think that that's amazing and wonderful. And all that CNC machining is it's cheating. I don't trust it. And I don't, I mean,
yeah,
industry
yeah,
after industry, you could say that, right?
yeah,
And there's,
absolutely.
and that again, the accelerating rate of innovation that this is going so fast that there's so much potential here. Let me share with you some stats. So I was
Mm,
in these micro LED things, right? There was a 12-inch square tile, had 360 by 360 pixels.
right.
Okay. If you do the math, that means like 1 square inch is 5 DMX universes of channels. Okay. Now you think about that from people who are used to lighting and like Lutron and Crestron and Dolly and DMX and
Yeah.
all that small minded stuff. And you have a whole nother section in the industry that's already moved to like 4K, 8K, and 16K video control of their environment.
Mm,
I'm sorry, but these people they're willingly making themselves irrelevant because they're sticking their heads in their sands because they're so proud of their craft. They think
yeah.
their craft is so precious. They think their craft is worth billing 200 an hour to their clients. And
Another
if you
Kodak
can't,
moment.
if you can't say, no, my end goal is making fantastic placemaking for
Mm,
profit driven customers, and you can't embrace every new technology, whether that's lighting technologies, DC power, video, AI, all the ways to show that, all the ways to generate content, like you're just going to be left behind
yeah.
fast too.
Yeah, yeah. So the big discussion, of course, is will AI replace us? And we're looking at that from a lighting designer's perspective, maybe from an architect's perspective, basically the design world, so to speak. How do we incorporate AI as part of our daily work? How do we remain in control? How do we use and get the best out of what AI is currently offering us and will offering us in the future?
Okay, so if you are afraid of AI if you are in the situation that you have invested, you are used to your tools, you're comfortable with it, just start.
Mm,
And a lot of stuff is really, really fun. Um, Midjourney, for me, I've made the comment that I use. I joke, I'm a recreational Midjourney user,
mm,
um, because it's become like the magazine of my mind for myself. That when I am out for a jog and I have an idea, I'll come home and I will just type a prompt into Midjourney and have the ideas come out. Whereas in the old days, I might scratch a couple notes in my sketchbook and maybe make my awful chicken scratch black and white sketch. That's like the only way I could have got it out of my mind. Now I can get it into an almost photorealistic world that I can see and remember and share. So it's like that's what I say. It's become this magazine of my mind. It's wonderful, right?
mm.
Um, I have also done some hobby projects. I love themed immersive design. I love the IAPA and the TEA crowds and all that, like theme park design, museum. Well, there was a competition to do a family entertainment center concept, and I just on my own made a whole deck. And that was sort of weird because that was 2 years ago, right in the middle of the rapid evolution of uh, Midjourney and Gen AI. So I started that as a very traditional PowerPoint deck where I made my own drawings and I made my own renderings and I did mood board images of Google image search and stuff like that. And then I kept seeing the power of what I was doing in Midjourney. I kept replacing images then with better and better and better AI generated content. And then suddenly video came on. So I was like, oh my God, I got to like start replacing my video. And I started making video clips. And it was like with it over the course of 4 months in the summer, like I made probably the equivalent of 10 versions of this uh, competition entry because it just changed so rapidly on me. But that's how I kept my skills up. And I
Mhm.
made my own voiceover and I synthesized my own voice because I wanted a very famous Disneyland announcer voice as like the voice of my presentation, and
Right.
it was fun. So I would tell everyone start using these AI tools for fun, and then you will very quickly see application to your business, to your creative worlds.
Mm.
Um, I was trying to get more freelance work, and AI has been a blessing for that because it I've been able to get my ideas out there, visualize fast, and share it
Mm.
on LinkedIn, right? And you've been seeing a lot of this stuff I've been putting out there to get people's attention. I'm
Yeah.
basically running a marketing program, selling myself
Yeah.
LinkedIn. And what am I going to do? Am I going to show the stuff I did 10 years ago or 20 years ago as like my professional portfolio and try to be relevant for today?
Yeah, no, no, I understand. So this brings also up the point of copyright and protection of creative work. Because in the past, obviously, it was you designing, you creating with the tools of the day. Now we have a creation that uses AI tools that somehow is out there in the cloud. I don't know how protective it is, how much control you have over your creative endeavors that you have while using AI tools. What are your thoughts on that?
Ideas are worthless until invested in by someone. And
Yeah.
I've had a very hard lesson from a very idealistic, youthful version of myself where I really believe that great ideas are going to rule the day to the bitter old curmudgeon that I am now, where as we were talking before this, I put 1,200 posts on my blog over a bazillion years. And you know what? Nobody steals them. Nobody
No.
uses them.
Mm,
Nobody takes them. So,
mm.
like these people who think their ideas are precious, you know what that immediately tells me? They have very few ideas. And
Yeah, but I mean it slightly in a different way. I mean it that somehow what you create in the virtual reality world of AI may be stored somewhere, and it's all like compute from searching the internet and finding ideas, and
yeah,
the so somehow your ideas may be floating around, and somebody else gets an idea that's based on your idea.
great. That evolves humanity. and I
Mm.
have plenty more ideas. See what I mean?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
somebody doesn't have a lot of ideas, they think their idea is precious, they think they deserve to monetize it, they think that somebody is stealing their precious idea.
Mm. Yeah, 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 yeah.
By the
You,
time somebody does that to me, I have already have 100 new ideas, and I'm on to another area.
yeah.
Um,
Great, great point of view. You also mentioned in your notes to me leadership. I read somewhere that they expect the first AI CEO to run a company very soon. Um, what, where are we going with AI into leadership, into running companies? What do you think is happening there?
I don't know if the people listening to the audio cast can see my smirk on my face as I think about all of the people I've worked for over the course of my career and saying, yeah, there's some people I've worked for that I think an AI could do better than.
Yeah.
It's just like all these people who hate self-driving cars. And then I think
Mm.
about all the people you've driven with or who has driven a car that you've been in. And don't you wish you had a computer driving the car instead of some of those people?
Yeah.
Yeah. For some of the people that I've had to ride in a car with, I'd rather have an Atari 2000 driving the car than a Tesla, actually. It would have been safer for me. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, if the business is steady state, if the business is commodity, if the inputs and outputs and the flows and the conditions of a build business are very steady, well known, well defined, then of course AI will do fantastic at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because CEOs aren't doing much,
No.
like I, I've I have been unfortunately in startup environments where a founder got the company off the ground and all that human magnetism and pitching and convincing and all that got them off the ground. And then their own incompetent management led them to bankrupt their own company.
Mm. Yeah.
So are you going to tell me that human is somehow better or worse than an AI version of it?
Time will tell, but I think I heard it on a podcast something that they expect the first company with an AI CEO to emerge very soon. And I think with all the checks and balances that you can build in with AI, it should not be a far fetched idea at all, like you say. The other thing that you mentioned is that you use AI sometimes as a therapist. I was wondering what
Yeah.
you can clarify that.
You haven't heard people joke about that using ChatGPT as their personal therapist now?
Yes, I heard about it. Yeah. So
Oh yeah, I
what
mean
are
ChatGPT is actually I mean very seriously is you ask it very serious, very human things about life, about whatever, and it's
mm,
given me outstanding advice.
mm,
And I guess I'm old enough to recognize if it's good advice or not. I have enough life behind me that I can do that, but I've been super impressed. I mean, it's as good as a hourly therapist that you're going to pay for.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's stunning what how much humanity ChatGPT can give you. And have you, I dare you, ask ChatGPT, ask him something about life or love or dating or death or some really, really human thing.
yeah.
And then when it gives you the answer, talk to it. Well, how do you know it? Why
Mm,
do you think this?
yeah.
Thanks. Say thanks, ChatGPT. I really appreciate this. This was good advice at the end, and see its response. And if you had those words coming out of a human, you think they're human.
Mm.
So
I
I
think it's an interesting concept, this whole therapy thing, because I understand AI is also sort of trying to please you in its answers. Um, you
yes.
also have used it a lot, and I have used it a lot also in writing. So it knows me, it knows the things that I like, what the things how I talk, and all that.
But
So
Martin, how
it,
is that different from all the humans you talk to?
I don't know. I don't not so much. I went to a therapist during my divorce, but that's about it, my
And you
knowledge.
don't think he was trying to make you feel good and like
Of
give
course, of course, of course, of course. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean that's what
But
I'm saying.
sometimes,
It's like
sometimes,
it's a mirror on humanity that a lot of humans don't appreciate seeing.
Yeah. But sometimes you guess I guess you need some hard truth and not always a pleasing answer. You might need
Oh,
the
Chat
reality.
ChatGPT has given me some of those too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that brings me to another point about longevity and health, because obviously with AI, there are some amazing things happening in that field as well. Today's generation is basically glued to their screen, so we can talk about digital wellness as well. Um, with your immersive designs, which are on a bigger scale than just a little screen on your tablet or your phone, I think there's a lot also that needs to be done and appreciated within the digital wellness that we are entering now. And I'm bringing in health and longevity because I feel with the progress that AI is also making in the medicinal world and the health applications, there's a lot there also that touches upon lighting as well.
Oh, it's amazing like how radical you could create stuff right now using available technologies that like most architects and lighting designers have barely can even conceive of. So let me go down this road for just a little bit because I think some of this is really, really fascinating. I got into this world of the LED displays and the microLED stuff, which is all back from my thesis, is viewing,
Mm.
the physical places that surround us will become portals to the virtual world. Okay, well, that's a two-way exchange. That's we can send stuff to the virtual world, and the virtual world can send stuff to
Mm.
us. Okay, now where most people have no concept of this is that you know it's all light. I've said this before. Every light is a pixel, and every pixel is a light. And I don't care if it's an Edison bulb on a dimmer or if it's an 8K LED display wall. To me, it's all the same. It's still photons, and it's still entering your eye. So you can
Yep.
say, well, that's the lighting budget and that's the AV budget, but that's garbage when it comes to the experience in the real world. Now,
Mm.
we have these technologies coming out of LED displays, for example, where you have such high quality LED displays that I've already seen this where if you set it up in the right conditions and people who don't know what they're looking at walk into a space, they will perceive that as reality, right? And even if you are somewhat knowledgeable about it, those displays have gotten to such a level now within a couple years you will have displays that when you're standing arm's length away will be indistinguishable from reality, right? The
Right.
surface is so precise, the quality of the LEDs are so precise, the quality of the content is so high, the display processing, the bit depth, the blah blah blah. It's
Mm.
striking. It's striking. And those LED displays are not just RGB anymore. Because in the virtual production world, the RGB displays, as anybody who knows color kinetics for a bazillion years, does not render skin tones very well. So what they've done is they've added extra channels into those displays, right? So these micro LEDs are so small. Now, for example, I was working with this product that had a zero point 0.8 millimeter pixel pitch. So 8/10 of 1 millimeter was a pixel every.
Wow.
Okay, that's incredible, right? Okay, but here's the more incredible part. Within that zero point 0.8, zero point 0.5 of that was black. The micro LEDs, the dyes, are so small that most of the surface is actually just black that you're looking at. So you can add lots of other LEDs. You can add a fourth or fifth channel into those micro LED displays. So what they're doing is they're adding white or they're adding amber or they're adding cyan so that they can get
Mhm.
proper skin tones in these virtual production studios and film and broadcast applications. Okay, so then right there you have melanopic response lighting coming out of your LED display wall. You get complete full spectrum control just like any other LED source. If again, a lot of people are so behind on these technologies, they just don't believe that with enough LEDs, you can replicate any light source you want on the spectrum. There's no quote unquote natural light and all that garbage. You can just make it if you want, right? So you have, imagine an 8K resolution wall that has a gorgeous, unbelievably precise surface. It can render any color of the spectrum you want. What's the impact on human health?
Mm.
If you're sitting next to that all day long, if that's in your office or I don't know, whatever, what's the impact? I mean, are you going to control the blue light output from it across the day? Is that enough? Are you controlling the content on it, the psychological response? Like, what are the cycles of time of the space? Like
Mm.
when you go in the morning, let's say it's you're an early bird and you're in there really early. What should that space look like? Should it look like dawn? Should it look like the sun is rising? When you get in there at 10 a.m., shouldn't it look like a beautiful bright day where you have a 10K sky dome and you have a 5600K direct lighting on you and it looks beautiful? And then as the day progresses, shouldn't the blue light diminish and shouldn't the horizon go down so you get the beautiful natural sunset? I mean, what does natural lighting and lighting for well building standards and on and on and on mean when you have all of these tech and they exist? You can go to Barcelona in 2 weeks and look at all this stuff, right? And by the way, the content generation is quick and easy, and the media distribution has plummeted in price compared to what it was just a few years ago, and on and on and on. So, yes, is it expensive? It's still expensive. If you're budgeting for 2x2 troffers, this is fantasy world in terms of budgets. But it's
Mm.
not the tech as the limit anymore. It's the imagination of the designers.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the budgets, it's the imagination. All this tech gets cheaper. It always gets cheaper. So there comes a point where you have to acknowledge it and embrace it, right?
yeah.
So, like, I don't think that's what you were fishing for, but that's where I want to send the
No,
conversation.
I
So now
was,
imagine you're doing a healthcare room in a hospital
yeah,
and there's no access to daylight.
yeah.
What would you propose?
No,
You
I
know?
was thinking, I was following a couple of those biohackers who talk about how to use the circadian rhythm, and in the morning they want to make sure they have enough daylight, and they use red light therapies, all that for longevity. There's a lot of relationship now between light and health, and I've just started to dive into that a little bit, and with AI technology behind it, there's probably a lot also in the world of operation, in terms of medical interventions where light plays a role. I don't know too much about it right now, but I do know that my morning walks in the morning when I wake up really helped me to set my biological clock, in terms of also when I have traveled, jet lag and things like that. Straight away, get into my circadian rhythm in the morning. It really helps me to reset my clock quicker. So there's a lot of things going on in there at the moment, and I know that people use red light therapies
Mhm.
also for health reasons, and that was just what I was fishing about. If you know anything about that.
Yes. So at Philips, back in the day, we had these corporate ventures. And back when we were still the conglomerate with healthcare and lighting together, there
Mm.
was a healthcare lighting startup. And they had the real science behind this. So, for example, wavelengths of blue light can penetrate the skin and release a certain nitric oxide or something that opens up the vascular flow and relieves pain. And that's not voodoo. This is Phillips. It was clinically proven. And there's
Mm.
all sorts of benefits of the various light spectrum from UV to IR, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, it gets so quickly butchered by false product marketing claims and
Mm.
shady garbage. And honestly, I hold the architectural lighting industry, the big guys, to task for rushing out circadian rhythm and blue light control when they had really no good justification for that. They didn't have good systems. They had no control systems that were, I mean, they're still using preset scene systems on fluorescent dimmers and trying to claim, oh, it's circadian lighting.
Mm.
They made a mess of it. I don't know. Is it like ever going to be able to be reclaimed in terms
Mm.
of the mind share of the customers? Will people believe this when you can
Yeah.
go on Amazon and find all of this shady, oh, whatever magic health effects, and like now you have everybody's eyeglasses have blue blocking. because they don't understand. No, you need blue light in the morning. You need blue light the whole first half of the day, and you don't need blue light in the end half of the day. And something as simple as that has been so butchered in all aspects of life that I
Mm.
don't know how to respond to that. Like I would think it would be incredibly difficult in a consumer market to actually sell real things. I think on professional projects you could, but it's going to be an uphill battle, and you're going to have a lot of clients think that you're just talking, woo woo,
Yeah.
fluffy stuff.
We are
And
not we are not doctors, that's for sure, and we
yeah,
certainly cannot claim that. But yeah, for sure. Now, you said you had a couple of slides. Is that something that you would like to share, just as a number of nice visuals that you have prepared, so that we can have a bit of a look of those immersive?
yeah,
Um,
sure. So so we're sharing it now. I wanted to share. This was what I did in 1999 and 2000. This was my thesis, right? When I said we are going to have this sort of magical surface, these LEDs were very quickly going to be this digital display in an architectural format, and then color changing lighting was a brand new concept. Digital LED color changing lighting was a new concept. And then you started to see these sort of early MIDI systems where people were putting sensors and queuing up lighting and all that. And then I said that you're going to have this display that will draw you with animation. When you reach for the product, it will show you specific product information, and it will show you a sort of trailing history of the products you have looked at by having an afterglow on it. And then this was what I was able to produce in 2000 using Bentley MicroStation, using Photoshop. And if you notice this yellow piece here, I described it as we're going to have these avatars. You're going to have these digital avatars in these spaces that are smart enough to kind of track you, and they know your history, and they can accumulate information about you. And I said, well, if that's the case, then the architecture has to have a personality. And this is something I'm still writing about to this day. Like AI is only making this far more real, that all of these things we talked about, you put into an architectural space. The architecture is basically a robot. It's a giant robot. So that robot can be incredibly personable to you, right? I mean, there's no limit in how fantastical you could make a space. Tony Stark's AI that he talks to, right? That's always around him. That's very real. Like, I mean, a teenager could hack that together nowadays. So how are we going to do it? And I took this image here and I put it in Midjourney, and I pulled these images and I made video and I put this up there, and it's, talk about the difference in how hard it was to visualize before to what you can do today. And, again, this sort
so
of
I
image.
imagine this is dynamic. This is like it's not a static background. It's a dynamic, moving background. Is it?
Yes. Well, if you have, I'm only showing you the still images, but the point was the videos where all of this is a big LED surface. The whole thing is an LED surface. All the lighting on the merchandise is LEDs. It's all controllable, and it can be integrated with other areas. And like this next slide here, couldn't really get it. It looks a lot better when it's animated, but there's supposed to be digital displays on all the merchandise too. So you have the scale of the walls, you have the scale of the ceilings, all of the architectural lighting can be fully color tunable, pixelated, projection mapped. I mean, any layer of digital information you want on any surface or on any physical object, this notion of layers of reality can be developed, right? And the effects can be beautiful. And
Yeah.
the dynamic motion here, Richard Kelly talked about focal glow and ambient luminescence, but he had the play of brilliance, which was critical to his concept of creating a quality space. And, of course, modernism threw away the play of brilliance because people got
Mm.
cheap. Well, with all these digital surfaces and technologies, the play of brilliance, that concept, and also his qualities of light, where he had motion and he had dynamics in there, was critical to creating a wonderful feeling architectural lighting scenario, right?
Yeah, that's
And
magical. Yeah.
in the theater, you see this, right? In the theater, even crude, old, decades old theaters could have gobos on rotating, simple
Mm.
things. And architectural lighting has just been so staid and stagnant. It's Le Corbusier's quote: architecture is the masterly play of forms bathed in light. So dumb lumps of concrete, you shine the light at it. And I've always said, no, let's invert that. The objects, the architecture is emitting light, it's emitting information, it's interactive with you. What can you do with that? This is just sort of like retail displays. Now, I actually made a formal CAD version because this is a very hard thing. This one thing you'll very quickly realize with like Midjourney is that the more extreme crazy you go, it has no source material to average from. So like
Mm.
sometimes I will need to make a model, and then you can throw it in Midjourney and it will help elaborate that, which is exactly.
So is that what you did here? You created the model of that tubular display first, and then imported that, so to speak.
Yeah,
Uh,
I made a single model of the glass tube and the shelves, made 3 of them, put that in Midjourney, and then it knew what I wanted, and then it was
mm,
able to elaborate into all these scenarios. And what this is supposed to be is a secure merchandise display where you have a glass cylinder that can simply rotate around. And on the inside, the back panel there is an actual micro LED display. So it's tiled, so you can have it in any format. So you can do a vertical display. You can have merchandise on shelves in front of that display. You can have hardware poking through the display if you really need. And you know, you can have a digital backdrop for the
mm,
merchandise and change it instantly if you want. Now,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
early. This was from 2023 using Midjourney when it was very young. And I actually loved Midjourney back then. You can still use those old models if you know how to do it because it was more hallucinogenic. It was
Right.
more free and it would produce things that like don't look right if you stare closely at it. But in that freed
Are
up
you
the.
saying that in a way, because of the machine learning, it restricts itself a bit?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
gotten more
interesting.
and more real,
Yeah,
which
yeah, yeah.
for better or for worse. So sometimes I've actually gone back and like used the old Mid-Journey models if I really want something to be more crazy, more out of mind, right? I mean, like these are
Yeah,
supposed to be hospital rooms with big LED display walls, right? And just showing like how profound you could make even a cramped little physical space if you really care about someone healing.
mm,
Imagine the power of that wall. Imagine the power
yeah,
of like
yeah, yeah,
seeing watching the flowers slowly evolve over the course of a day, or
yeah, yeah.
whimsical healing.
Dreaming in reality, it's dreaming in reality, nearly.
You know, I think that there would be profound psychological effects. I couldn't care less even about circadian rhythm and clinical proof. It's just the space looks great. The space
Yeah, yeah,
makes someone laugh. The space
mm,
is playful. Maybe it's a children's ward. Maybe it's showing fun little, animals once in a while running through. I mean, there's so many things that you don't need biological clinical studies about to still make a wonderful experience for a human being, right? And then
So
this
how
like
how
wrapping the.
could we,
Hmm?
how could we connect with the actual person in the room? Because obviously now with AI, there's sufficient technology available to actually identify who is in the room, and make the connection between what they see and maybe what happens in their life, and the connection could be in retail, but like also here in healing, when you're in an environment like this, or could be in a spa or a therapy center, whatever, where you connect the actual person and their reality with an immersive environment that connect with it.
Yeah, I I addressed this in a presentation I gave one time where this discussion very quickly gets derailed by like privacy discussions.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And that
yeah, yeah.
that absolutely drives me nuts because that is so narrow-minded and ill-informed. So if you think about the architectural experience in terms of tracking, in terms of electronic tracking, there's I call it the phases of anonymity. So on one hand, you could live in a mud hut in the middle of nowhere. There is no tracking. You are totally anonymous. Building has no memory of you except for your footprints. But then you start to add in simple interactions. So, hey, you know that faucet that you stuck your hand under and it turned on? Think about it. The building was tracking you. It responded to you, but it was anonymous and it has no memory of you, but it still knew you were there and it reacted to you just like a robot, right? And then you can go up to very sophisticated tracking, like a LiDAR system that can understand that you are a human, that can understand where your body is or your limbs are, but is not refined enough to understand who you are, right? And that can all be done anonymously, but with tremendous precision about your body in space, or your motion, or your linger, or your gaze time. And then there's the point where you check in, and you might check in because you're going to a hospital, or because you're going into an airport, or because you're going to your private club or your hotel. Nobody is anonymous when you check into a hotel, right? Do you want to be on an airplane filled of anonymous people who have never checked in? No. So there's a lot of very, very good justified reasons that you must check in. You are not an anonymous private person. And then they have your data. And then there's levels of just basic, like making the thing easier, whatever it is, easier for you, all the way up to having this sort of magic genie that will understand your whole history, understand your context. It could look at your face and understand your mood, and it could look at the current today's topics, and it could be like this magic butler, genie, assistant, friend, confidant to you. And
Mm.
you go from Mud Hut to that, and
Yeah.
anywhere along those lines is perfectly valid. But you got to understand that continuum, and you got to place where you want to be very specifically and why. And then with that wordy context, I'll answer your question. Okay, so there's a person here in this healthcare facility. Obviously, they're known. Obviously, their records are known. We know their
Yeah.
age. We know their sex. We know what condition they're suffering. We know how long they've been there. Right? This is all just basic data that could or should be there. Okay,
Yeah.
now you're the designer. You're the creative mind. You know all that. What are you going to do? How is the space going to interact? How is the space going to make this person's experience during a tough time in their life better, right? Is it clinical circadian rhythm for melanopic response? That's one little part of it. Is it the psychology of making a miserable place happy for them? You know, uh, who knows? Like this is to me, this is where lighting designers and interior designers and architects should be exploring and should be playing
Mm.
with a new
It would
way
be
of
amazing if something like
placing
this could be realized.
what
It would be amazing if something like this could be realized.
it can.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, do you have the ambition to have a creative team try?
Mm. Yep.
And trust
Beautiful.
me, if you have a good creative team, they can find ways to do this very inexpensively in terms of the installation of the technology. And I
Yeah.
think what happens is too many times you hire these professionals that are used to like big budget spectacles or arena
Mm.
shows or theme parks, and they just use all these technologies that just cost a fortune still to this day because they're complete pro tech stuff. And you don't have like the hacker mindset of
Mm.
no, we're going to do this all with a Raspberry Pi and like some things, and so that's the future, right?
Mm.
And I think I don't know
I
what
love
other
it.
slides I had here. Oh, these are some, again, very early ones where I was just looking at like fitting rooms. I mean, if I was a luxury retailer like LVMH and I really was looking at the experience of a guest in one of their stores, I would put so much money into the fitting rooms. It wouldn't be funny. I would
Yeah.
have a sumptuous digital experience so that when you go in there and you are trying on your $5,000 dress or whatever it is, you feel like it is the most magnificent experience you've ever had. So when you walk out, you are buying that dress, right?
Mm.
And there is very clear ways that you could design those experiences to be phenomenal, right? And I mean, just again,
Beautiful.
where's the creativity? Where is it coming from for like this experience? I don't see it out there.
Mm.
There's very few people that are trying to design immersive digital experiences in the physical real world that are having any success um, doing it. But
Mm.
I just love this image. Again, this is a 3-year-old image from Midjourney, and it just was this wild hallucinogenic thing, and it's just so inspiring, right? Wouldn't you love to be standing in front of this wall and see this wall? But if you look closely, like this woman's leg is like blurs into the architecture, like you're on LSD or
Yeah,
something. So, but
beautiful. It's been absolutely lovely to see all this, Brad, and now I get a bit where Rogier gets it from, the guru of all immersive environments.
yeah, this last slide is just putting an LED wall in a shower. I mean, you have more billionaires than ever in the world, and they want to spend their money on their home. And the most sensual and intimate part of your day for a lot of people is the shower.
Hmm.
Okay, so why not make it magical? Why not make it something extraordinary? Maybe it's just beautiful particles of light. Maybe it's staring into a forest scenario. Maybe it's like you're staring at a window overlooking Paris at night in your shower. Uh, Go for it. And that's easy
Yeah,
to do. That's really really easy to do
that's
actually.
definitely not difficult. Yeah, yeah, of course not. That's not
Um
difficult.
that's it.
Beautiful. If there, I want to conclude with one question. If there's one thing you could change or influence right now in today's rapidly changing world where AI is so dominant, what would it be?
I think I've given you a lot of answers to that question here. I think my old curmudgeon self has complained enough about all the things I want to change, haven't I?
But is there one that stands out above all others?
Yes, and it's something I've been focused on, which is educating interior designers and architects to have a language around immersive digital experiences. So
Mhm.
my grand hypothesis on this is that there was this generation X, my generation, that NASDAQ crash set back all of these sorts of immersive technologies by a decade. And then in 2007, Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, and the rest of the world has been little black mirrors. So there's a generation now of architects who are in the sort of senior associate and principal roles that have no language around the dynamics of time, of layers of reality, of connecting space to the digital world. It's a shame because it should have been there. So they're missing that. And that's, I think, a fundamental root cause that they're just afraid of it. They don't want to put a screen in their project because they think it's just going to be some AV budget. It's going to be some horrible, I don't know, Heineken ad or whatever on it. It's going to make their project look terrible. And they don't want to see that. And they're not embracing all of these creative potentials about what the architectural presence of these digital surfaces and how that's so profound
Mm.
24/7 across the course of a year. So that's the one thing I would like. I would like, lighting designers, especially, shame on you. You should be very open-minded, and you should be looking at this, and you should be going to Infocom or Integrated Systems Europe. And if your concept of lighting controls is Lutron and Crestron, shame on you, right? You got to move on. You got to get beyond that. So,
Thanks, Brad. It has been a blast to talk to you. A lot to digest and a lot to take in there. But yeah, it's been a very enjoyable chat. And I hope to see you soon in Frankfurt. We're going to catch up there. And thanks for this beautiful discussion.
you're welcome. Thank you, Martin. It was good talking to you again.
We'll
I
see each
hope I
other.
hope I give people a lot of inspiration and not just sort of complaining.
No, no, I know you like to give back also, and that has really shown through this chat that we've had, and thank you for that. I think people will really enjoy this discussion that we had. So thank you.
Good luck, everyone.